Hello everybody, welcome back to Norwich Talk for another transfer rumour video. We're here to discuss Borja Sainz, a player who, by the looks of it, it's a fairly interesting one. A player who is young but has a good amount of experience to his name. One that I do believe off the bat would be, given my research that I've done, on paper, we know football's not played on paper, but would be seemingly a fairly decent signing. Now, immediately, I want to apologise. There's lots of words that I have to pronounce, Spanish and Turkish words of places that, we know it's not going to go well, but I will try my best, and I do apologise in advance. But as we always do in these videos, straight in with what we know. He's 22 years old and he is Spanish. He is currently a winger, according to SofaScore, a left winger, playing in the Turkish Superlig for Giresunspor. That's how I'm going to say it. Please correct me if needs be. As I said, that's the Turkish Super League. That's where Milot Rashica, not fellow Norwich City winger, but a fellow winger, is currently playing. That season is yet to conclude. However, it will be soon enough. He is a right-footed left winger, which is very interesting, a point that we will circle back round to a little bit later. Going into his career so far, he spent most of his youth career at Athletic Bilbao, before he moved to Deportivo Alaves. Over 2 seasons that he was owned by them, he played his first season there, which was the 2020-2021 season, where he played 40 games in La Liga. They finished bottom of the league and got relegated. The following season, he moved out on loan to Zaragoza, where they finished mid-table, which by the looks of it from the research is over the past couple of years, especially where they typically finish. So not bad. And he is about to get relegated from the Super League with Giresunspor, which would mean, according to Nick Masheter on Twitter and the Pinkin article as well, it would mean that he'd be available on a free transfer. So again, another potential free transfer for Norwich City. This one being very different to the current ones that we've had so far in Jack Stacey and Ashley Barnes, where they're very experienced older heads coming into a squad that needs that kind of experience. This kind of signing of Sainz would be the opposite, in the sense of young, fresh, no experience at all, a real gamble. But again, a free transfer never really hurts, does it? The team that he currently plays for just about avoided relegation last year. So when I looked into this relegation, I thought, right, is it a freak season or something? Prior season, they just about avoided relegation, so perhaps it is the norm for them to be in that battle. He's made 5 appearances for the Spanish under-19s team, where he scored 3 goals, which isn't bad going. Any international goal at any level is always impressive. So yeah, there you go. That's not too bad. Now, getting into his stats for this current season, I should say, playing in the Turkish Super League. I'm not going to comment on the quality of that league because I don't really know it. I'll let you make your own judgment on that. But he scored 8 goals and gotten 3 assists this season, which, to face value, isn't the worst thing in the world. All goals that he scored were inside the box, and 6 of them were with his right foot. So, first point, left winger, right-footed, scoring most of his goals with his right foot. You think, right, he likes to cut inside and shoot, which I believe was one of the characteristics of Christos Solis that we had described to us. So having seen how Solis is developed at Norwich, it doesn't fill me with a great deal of hope. However, it does make a lot of sense for David Wagner's system. What we've seen a lot so far is the high-flying fullbacks where the wingers tuck inside, or the dead opposite, where the fullbacks, I think, typically come inside. One fullback will come inside and the winger will hug the touchline. That's more sort of Onel Hernandez. But like at face value, it seems that he's a player perhaps cut out for the very vague system that we saw on display for David Wagner last season. He averages a key pass per game, which I genuinely don't really have much perspective if that's any good. To my knowledge and in my opinion, 1 key pass per game, I think that's fairly decent. Where there's only 3 assists, you can only in terms of assists. You can only pick up assists when you have quality in front of you. Perhaps he's not had that quality. If it was Timu Pukki in front of him, we would have been assured that there was that quality there, whereas at the moment it's a bit up in the air, isn't it? We've got Ashley Barnes, Josh Sargent, Adam Eder as the three main men. None of them particularly prolific, so it will remain to be seen whether that key pass per game will turn into, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9 more assists. But yeah, I think that's fairly decent. In terms of dribbles, duels, etc., all of those stats are near 50% completion. I think it was 6 take-ons or 6.3 take-ons per game, which he's averaging half of those, which is already better than what Milot Rashica ever was in a yellow and green shirt, to be fair. And the idea that he will take players on and occasionally, well, not occasionally, but mostly get random, fairly decent. Those kind of stats, especially like take-ons and stuff, they're all right, but I want you to make your own judgment, because I'm very, and this is where I sometimes wish I was a bit of a stat nerd and I had all this, amazing football tactical analysis knowledge, which NCFC Analysis on Twitter absolutely does. I'm more of a sort of say what you see, if you will. But face value seems all right. At the very least. Now, I went to who scored, because I always do, for the strengths and weaknesses, just to get a general idea. Again, it's all very subjective as opposed to stats. The strengths listed were dribbling, finishing, and defensive contribution. Weaknesses were holding on to the ball, passing, and aerial duels. I'm going to look at the strengths and say dribbling, finishing, defensive contribution. This idea of defensive contribution, followed by another quote that was below it, which was he likes to tackle and give fouls away, stinks a little bit of that Argentinian man who used to play for us. This idea that the contribution is there, the effort is there to defend, but perhaps it's not refined, it's not polished, it's not perfect. But what was really interesting to me is this idea of I immediately want to know or get an idea of what the defensive abilities and contribution was like, because in this David Wagner system, it's all very, in theory, because we haven't seen it in full flow yet, but it's all very heavy metal. Everyone contributes. Everyone, it's high press, attack, attack, attack. And if we're going to get a winger in, you'd think, right, well, that's quite an important position to press from. And if it's someone who's going to defensively be willing, at the very least, as opposed to completely able and brilliant, willing at the very least is, for me, a good sign. But yeah, I think potentially there's a bit of a combination of the theory of Scholes and what we've seen from Buendia, this idea of we've got ourselves, he's quite short as well. Again, with height, we got into a bit of a pickle in the last video, but Wikipedia says 178 centimetres, SofaScore says 174. I hope I don't offend anyone here, but I'm going to go with the very subjective, he's short. So yeah, make of that what you will. This idea that he wants to cut inside, defend, shoot, and that he can create, again, sounds like the perfect player, but feet on the ground. He's 22 years old, never played in England. It's not dead set on, but the characteristics of this player, for me, depending on how good of a coach David Wagner is, and we don't have that knowledge of him as Norwich City manager, we don't have that product of him being a coach yet. Again, we have to give it time if we're going to judge it properly, like we did with Daniel Farke. Could be, he could be moulded into, a decent little championship operator. He's got that top flight experience. He's got that second tier experience. He's been in a relegation fight, so he's immediately a prime candidate for Norwich City. But I think this one will be a very interesting one if it was to happen. I think, it's fairly realistic that it will happen. The idea that it's a free transfer, for me, why not? Let's try it. We're desperate for a refresh, and the thing is, and where we've referenced these sort of niche signings in the past, your Pukis, your Buendias, they don't all land, but you've got to take a chance, haven't you? And Borja Sainz seems like a good opportunity to perhaps dig into that market and see what the situation is. In terms of Brexit and getting a work permit, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure. I'm not particularly clued up on it. But I can imagine the Pinkham will be, so absolutely go and pester them for that question. But yeah, that is Borja Sainz. I hope this information was useful to you. I would, as always, love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think that he could perhaps be this next little niche gem that we find from abroad, or is it going to be another maybe Christos Scholas in that they come and then they don't adapt at all and they don't show any signs of promise? I'm very harsh on Christos Scholas, but I've run out of patience at this point. It's not my job to be level-headed. But thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you want to leave a thumbs up, again, that'd be much appreciated. Subscribe to if you fancy it, and I'll see you in the next one.